So I actually just realized that I spilled a whole bunch of oil on my shirt today. Like literally as I was walking in here, I realized that, and I probably should have changed my shirt, but it's like 12 degrees, or it feels like it's 12 degrees, and I don't want to be topless in the amount of time that it takes to, no. So you're just going to deal with that today because, you know, I'm just a mess in general, in some way, in every video. So it all really fits with the theme. Has nothing whatsoever to do with the pour, but you know, that happens fairly often in the soap world here at Soap and Clay, where I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for day 317 of 365 days of soap, and today we are doing a Sudser request. Actually, we're doing a hot process soap. But we're not just doing any kind of hot process soap, we are doing a fluid wine hot process soap. Now, we haven't done hot process on the channel in a while, and for the most part that's because I don't really do a ton with hot process. But there are different, just like within cold process soap making, there are different ways to essentially approach a batch of hot process. You can do the normal batch where you get your crock pot out and you do the things and all the jazz, yes, but then you end up with a batch of soap that's actually pretty thick and you're sort of just like spooning it in and pressing it down to get into the mold. It looks very, very rustic, right? So there's this whole last section of hot process, much like within cold process in the C-pop world, right? Where it's called fluid hot process. And effectively what that is you reserve a portion of your water from your first lye water stage, right? As well as put in a percentage of extra fun things at the end of the cook to essentially rehydrate the soap itself and make it more fluid so it can be poured and then it can therefore be swirled and all the things. And I actually had a Sudser ask me a few months ago to do a fluid wine soap, because she was essentially wondering if you could add wine after the cook and what that would do. And so that's what we're doing today. So I'm going to show you the process that I do for this, as well as the extra things that I put into the lye solution and how much water, wine in this case, I reserve from the actual solution itself, now in the video. So let's go there and we can talk all about it. Okay, so first thing up with creating a fluid hot process batch of soap is going to be, I would recommend doing some fun things to your lye water solution. Now, the easiest thing to do is to actually cut the amount of water that you're putting in your lye solution like in half. And the biggest rule of thumb is you need at least as much water as you do lye for this stage. So you can cut your water solution in half and reserve the rest of it. You can also do this. I am putting in 1 teaspoon of powdered sugar per pound of oils in this batch and dissolving it in the water before I put the lye in. And then I will add the lye to the water solution and let it do its thing. And again, I'm reserving a little over half of the total amount of water for this, because we're not exactly making a regular fluid hot process. We're making a fluid wine hot process soap. So I will be putting in the remainder of the liquid in this in the form of wine. And this is being soaked at, the water content is 2.4 times the amount of lye, roughly, with all of that. So with hot process, you can dissolve your lye into your water and do your thing, and you do not need to wait for it to cool down. That's one of the cool things about hot process, is that it's all done, you know, heated. So there's that. Now the reason for reserving some of the water, some of the liquid from this original lye stage here, is to essentially rehydrate the batch after the cook. So once you've hit trace and you've allowed your hot process soap to cook and it gets thick, right? If you have reserved a portion of your water in the form of any number of things, water, milk, wine, whatever, you can then add it after the cook is completed and the soap is testing neutral. And it will then, you know, reliquify the batch, and it will make it smoother and easier to pour and swirl and do all the things, so it's less rustic looking. Another way that you can increase the fluidity of your batch is to do this, which is sodium lactate. And I'm adding just 1 teaspoon, just over 1 ounce rather, of the sodium lactate to this batch size. So anywhere between 1 and 3%. 1 and 3% is good. So this is what I added in. So there it is, and the 8.19 ounces of wine, that will be reserved for after the cook. And so that's what we'll be putting in at that point. Now that the lye solution has been prepped and is ready to go, the sodium lactate is ready to be poured into the lye solution before we put it into the oils. It's now time to put the oils into the crock pot and get them heating. Now, I don't know. I usually turn the crock pot on to high, and then when I'm bored of looking at it and waiting for it to heat up, that's when I start the process. And so usually the oils get to be around 150-ish degrees. And by that time, the lye has already cooled down to God knows what, you know, whatever. And that's when I actually start the process of doing the actual cook and the mixing with the lye and the warm oils. So that's what we are doing here. We are just going to mix this to trace. And so we are going to take the lye solution that we've just put the sodium lactate into, and we will then dump that into the crock pot and take the stick blender to it until we hit trace. So it's basically the exact same thing that you're used to seeing with a cold process recipe of soap. Oh, so sorry, had to answer the front door because we have kids running in and out because it's all the thing, and the neighbor kids needed to go home. So yes, taking this to just like a regular cold process soap recipe, taking this to trace. We want to hit emulsion, and you've seen me do hot process before, and I usually just keep mixing until it gets real thick and weird looking. I don't really recommend doing that if you're trying to make a fluid hot process soap. Just take it to trace, and once you've found trace, go ahead and put the cover on it and let it hang out for about 10 to 15 minutes and let it cook. Now, I usually keep it on high, but that all depends on the type of crock pot that you have and all of the finicky little settings that you may have. High works for me, but I've also, you know, put it on high and been soaping it too high, and that 10 to 15 minutes ends up being too much time. If you don't pay attention to it, it will bubble out of the crock pot. So know your crock pot, know your temperatures, and, you know, watch it, because that can happen. And with me, that actually is more prone to happen because I forget that it's even a thing. So there's definitely that. But now we basically have a very good trace here, and so I am going to just go ahead and cover this up and let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will check on it after the cook and see what we are working with at that point, and, you know, continue on with the whole thing and the doing of the fluid hot process, really. So, and while this is cooking, we will be prepping all of the other fun stuff that we will be putting into the, you know, pour. So let's go check out that prep work and, you know, do all the things. Okay, again, and while this is all cooking up, we are going to prepare our colorants and do the things. Now, for this, I'm going to use 2 different colors and just do a little drop swirl thing. Now, I did reserve a portion of the oils in order to do this, and so there's a little over an ounce of oils, about 1.5 ounces of oils in each of the colors. That's what I've dispersed my micas in. And this particular soap is being soaped at a 7% superfat, which is kind of stock standard. And that is the scent blend for this. Now this scent blend is actually one of them from Lone Star. I want to say it's like black cassis and cypress or something. Yes. And this is what the soap looks like about 15 minutes after the cook. You can stir it, which as you can tell I did before I opened it up, or before I showed you this. You don't have to though. It's completely, you can let it go. Now first up I'm going to put in my scent blend and mix it up, and you will see how much more fluid the batter gets at that point. So that is good. And with this as well, where's my clay? Where's the... So the Pyrex there is actually wine. We're using a white wine for this, and I went ahead and heated that up. Now, that would be my biggest recommendation whenever you're adding something to a hot process batch of soap in order to like rehydrate it and make it fluid. I would heat up whatever it is that you're putting in there, because the cold and the hot and it can make things do weird things sometimes. There's my kaolin. Okay, so kaolin clay is going in there, dispersed in a little bit of water. Good, but bad, because kaolin can start making things thicker faster. But as you can see, it's a pretty decent consistency, but this is the consistency that most hot process soap is, right? And so this is where you're spooning it into the mold and doing the things. And so we are going to, again, make this batter more fluid so you can do things like swirls and all of the jazz. Now, for this particular recipe, you see how it is loosening up the batter really nicely, and I'm just mixing it with a spatula and doing the things. You can also take your stick blender back to this, or even better, like a whisk onto your stick blender, like the whisk attachment, and get all of those bumps out. You can do that. I'm not for this particular batch though, because the request was that it still looks quasi-rustic. So that's what I'm doing, but just mixing around with the spatula, you see how nice it, how fluid it now is. You can totally pour that, and that's great. And taking the whisk to it, maybe breaking up some of the bigger clumps is fine. But as I said, you can definitely take the whisk attachment that comes with your immersion stick and totally work all those bumps out at this stage. Now, I have taken the crock pot itself, the actual crock, off of heat at this point, and so it's just the heat of the crock that is keeping everything at heat right now. I find that to be easier. I don't know that it really matters either way. You can leave it in the crock pot, you cannot, but the crock pot gets super hot and it's all a thing. So there's that. And I'm just scooping out some of the soap into the two little containers so we have some color and we can do the swirly swirl thing. And then the rest is going to be just a white base. Now again, the scent has already been put into this, and the kaolin clay has been put into the entirety of the batch. And even now, as it's losing heat, as the crock is, this is very interesting actually, because we're soaping, the crock itself is hot, but the room that I'm soaping in at this exact time is like 58 degrees. It's very, very cold. This was first thing in the morning. I had not turned on the heat in the shop, and so it was a little bit chilly. But as you can see, everything works in really nicely. Reserving that extra little bit of oil definitely helps to hydrate the colored portions for sure. And this is actually when I think I got all the oil on my shirt and didn't realize it. It's all a thing. I'm a hot mess today, you guys. It's ridiculous. Have you guys seen that thing going around of the, like this little, I don't know, meme thing or whatever that's like marking all of the things that oil is used to make or whatever, and like 60% of the things on the list are like, I think it's supposed to be like some like don't close down the pipeline thing or whatever, which is like crude tar, which is just like the pipeline for like crude tar, right? And like 60% of the things on that list are made using vegetable oil, like shampoo and soap. And like it was really funny. Like, okay, yeah, no, that's all oil. I mean, oil is used to make those things, you're right, but not the kind of oil that's being transported through the pipeline, so that's weird. point is, I got vegetable oil on my shirt, and so I'm hoping it will come out. You know, there's that. I'm just looking at my shirt sleeves right now, realizing that that's one of my Taylor Swift sweatshirts, and I got freaking oil on it, and I'm big mad. But anyway, yes, we're just doing a nice plop with the actual, you know, colored soap portion, whatever. And as you can see, it's still like there's some good fluidity with all of that. Now, this would be even smoother again if you just take the attachment with the whisk attachment from your stick blender to it, but still pours, still does its thing. It's great, and it's way easier to work with than the super thick, you know, hot process stuff that you're just spooning into the mold and sort of tamping down with your spatula or, you know, your hand sometimes. Sometimes hot process reminds me of soap on a stick, right? Like whenever anybody talks about soap on a stick, I'm like, so like hot process? Is that what you're talking about? Oh no, that's not what you made? Yeah, I'm not familiar with that then. But yeah, this is then I'm just gonna take the rest of the colored stuff and just kind of put it on top and do a little skewer with the whole thing. And I'm not going to put this in the oven because the thing is, this is already cooked, right? So C-pop could, well, I mean, it's not going to be C-pop, it would be H-pop, really. But it's not really going to yield a huge benefit. I mean, it can with the extra heat phase again. It can help some of that water evaporate faster. Sure. But as you can see, we put the wine in and nothing happened. There wasn't anything weird that went on with putting the wine in after the cook. It was all great. And we're just going to actually just leave this on the counter to set up overnight. And you don't even need overnight. This is actually something that sets up in a few hours and then you can cut it. But we're going to let it set overnight so we can test the lather tomorrow. We can do the cut and test the lather, and you can see how much of the sort of chunkiness still remains in all of this. And I'm hoping some does, because again, this was this ended up being an order for a wholesale account, and they wanted it to look rustic. They wanted it to look like a hot process batch of soap. So I'm really hoping that that's what's accomplished. But you know, if not, this is just a little teeny tiny batch of soap that I make for the channel, and the rest of their bars will be more rustic for sure. But let's go check out the cut and see what we are working with, you know, for that. Okay, and on to the cut of this guy. And remember, 8 ounces of wine went into this at the end. And yeah, no issues there. We don't see any separation. We don't see any weird discoloration. We don't see any seepage from the wine. Everything looks good. And let's check the inside of these bars out. Oh, and there you go. There you go. You have some swirls and some things. Now, you could take hangers to this, and it would have really pushed all the swirls and everything into it better. And again, you can totally make this smoother just taking the stick blender to it. I'm gonna have to do this again to show you guys that, like, the stick blender process, but it really is as simple as that. Just take your little attachment, your little whisk attachment that comes with your stick blender, and blend out those bumps. It's like overbeating mashed potatoes, which I never actually knew was a thing until I did it, and I did it on a holiday, and my mom was like, "You overbeat the mashed potatoes." I'm like, how the flip did I do that? Okay. But yeah, you can do it. You can overbeat the mashed potatoes. Smooths it out. It's real nice, for sure. But yeah, no weirdness with any of those bars. Everything looks great. No separation, no seepage, no signs of anything being wrong with them. And we're going to do a quick lather test. Now, these bars are still a little soft, but I want to show you the lather right off the bat with this and what you can expect, you know, with your finished product. And isn't that delightful? Immediately has a nice big bubble on it, which I'm a fan of. That's a nice bar of soap, my friends, for sure. And yeah, no, there's a lot of fun things you can do with hot process, with the fluid hot process. And one of those things is, yeah, you can add your wine after the cook without any real issues, and you still get that big beautiful bubble that, you know, wine tends to bring to soaps in general. And that is day 317, a fluid wine hot process soap recipe batch thing. And there it is, a fluid hot process soap batch with wine. Yes, totally. Now, I say fluid because, I mean, I could have gotten it to be much smoother in consistency and texture if I had taken like my beaters to it and really broken up all of those, you know, clumps and bumps. I didn't want to though. For this one, I actually do still want to maintain the sort of rustic nature of the bar. So, I mean, maybe I should have done it different because that was one of the points of the video, but I guess that gives me something to do later, so that's awesome. But yeah, no, it's a fairly uncomplicated process, really. As long as you make sure that you have as much water as you do lye during your lye stage, you're good to go there. And then for the rest of your lye, which I would again soap it like maybe 2.4 times the lye for your water. You can add it in the secondary phase after the cook. I do recommend heating it, and you can add all manner of things. You can add milk and yogurt, and people do all kinds of cool things after the cook to really make their batch fluid enough to pour and do swirls and keep it smooth. Yes, so there they are. I hope you guys had fun with today's video. If you're interested in these fluid wine soap things, you can't actually get them because this was for a special order for a wholesale account, and so they're gone. So I'm sorry about that, but you can get anything else at soapandclay.com that, you know, we currently have available. So there's that. If you're interested in more soapy antics and seeing what other tests and recipes and tutorials and all the things that I do, because we do this daily, as the name 365 Days of Soap might suggest, subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. For those of you who are subscribed to the channel, hey, thanks for being awesome and being okay with my stained shirt. It's on one side. It's there. It's totally there. I appreciate you each and every day, and I mean that. Thank you to my Sudsers. And again, thank you to all of you for joining me for another round of 365 Days of Soap. I am out of here for today. I will see you guys all again tomorrow. Bye.